You are tired, aren't you? Tired of chasing a happiness that never arrives. You wake up and feel an emptiness. You go to sleep, and it's still there. And the most ironic thing is that the more you try to get rid of this weight, the more you force a smile, the more you repeat those positive phrases you read on the internet, the deeper you sink. And maybe no one tells you this clearly, but Dostoevsky did. And he knew. He knew that this modern obsession with being happy is a disease disguised as a solution. He wrote, "Man only likes to recount his misfortunes. Happiness does not enter into his calculations. Because true happiness is not pursued like a prize. It happens when you stop running away from pain." And that's where most people fail. Because you were taught to avoid suffering at all costs, to numb your anguish with distractions, with empty promises, with unattainable goals. But Dostoevsky was not afraid of pain. He dove into it. He looked into the eyes of human misery, madness, despair, and found there meaning. Yes, meaning. Because suffering, contrary to what you've been told, can be the beginning of a transformation. But for that, you need to stop, breathe, and face the uncomfortable truth. Maybe you are suffering not because something is wrong with you, but because you are trying to live a lie. The lie that life has to be light, positive, fulfilling all the time. Dostoevsky wrote, "Suffering is the only source of consciousness." And maybe that's why you are here now, watching this video. Because something inside you already knows there is a farce in this race for happiness. I am not here to console you. I am here to confront you. Like an old psychologist who has seen this same cycle repeat in thousands of souls, people trying to look fine when everything inside them is collapsing. And you? How long will you keep up this facade? How long will you try to heal real pain with superficial solutions? In this video, you will understand why Dostoevsky believed that the more you try to be happy, the more you suffer. And perhaps, for the first time, you will be able to accept your pain not as a mistake, but as a portal. Shall we enter? Today, being happy has become an obligation. It's everywhere. In advertisements on social media, in motivational speeches, as if life should be an endless sequence of perfect moments, spontaneous laughter, constant achievements, and forced gratitude, sadness, doubt, fatigue. All of this has become synonymous with personal failure. If you are sad, it's because you don't know how to live properly. If you are anxious, it's because you're not vibrating at the right frequency. This is the tyranny of modern happiness. It does not liberate. It oppresses. Dostoevsky saw this before anyone else. In his novels, he exposes what happens when humans try to shape their existence around artificial ideals. In Notes from Underground, he talks about the man who rejects any system that forces him to be rationally happy. He denounces the trap of a world where pain is seen as a defect and not as an essential part of the human soul. Man likes to build, but he also likes to destroy. Why? Because he has will, because he is free. This sentence reveals something disturbing. Perhaps what destroys us is not suffering itself, but the denial of it. Look at how we live today. We have created a world where everything must be beautiful, efficient, and positive. Social media are showcases where no one suffers, where everyone has purpose, a healthy routine, unshakable self-esteem. But this is just a mask, because when night falls and silence settles in, you feel. And Dostoevsky knew exactly what this silence is. He called it the inner abyss. And it is this abyss that plastic happiness tries to cover up with ready-made phrases. The problem is that human beings were not born to live anesthetized. When you try to remain constantly happy, you are violating your own nature. You are amputating fundamental parts of your psyche, your sadness, your anger, your loneliness, your existential doubt. And what remains is not a light life, but a superficial one, without depth, without truth, without soul. The compulsory happiness of modernity is like the crystal palace that Dostoevsky criticizes, a cold, sterile utopia where there is no room for the irrational, for mistakes, for redemptive pain. But he knew that the human soul is chaotic, unpredictable, contradictory, and that trying to standardize it in the name of an ideal of happiness is to kill the spirit from within. And perhaps that is why, despite living in the 19th century, Dostoevsky sees our time more clearly than many contemporary thinkers. Because he was not afraid to say that the pursuit of happiness can be a symptom of despair, that there is more truth in a cry of anguish than in a forced smile. But then, if we should not live for happiness, what is the role of suffering in human existence? And why did Dostoevsky see it as a form of revelation? This is what we will explore now. If this content is making sense to you, click the subscribe button and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for your support. For Dostoevsky, suffering is not a punishment. It is a language, a force that reveals who we really are when all the masks fall away. He did not see pain as an accident to be avoided, but as a deep necessity of the human soul. In his novels, there are no truly transformed characters who have not gone through inner hell. There is no redemption without a fall, no truth without anguish. And this is precisely what our contemporary culture refuses to accept, that suffering can be sacred. Take Raskolnikov from Crime and Punishment as an example. A man who tries to justify a murder in the name of a rational idea of moral superiority. He believes he can transcend moral laws, that he is above good and evil. But it is suffering, and only suffering, that slowly reconnects him with his humanity. Guilt corrodes him, fever devours him, and delirium confronts him. And it is only in this state of ruin that he begins to see something truer, more alive, more human. Suffering and pain are always mandatory for a broad consciousness and a deep heart. Dostoevsky leaves no doubt. Those who feel deeply live fully. In modernity, suffering is pathologized. Sadness is diagnosed as a chemical failure, anguish as dysfunction. And of course, there are clinical contexts that require care. But Dostoevsky warns us of the danger of dehumanizing pain, of trying to silence the soul with pills, formulas, and ready-made phrases. Because suffering, despite being cruel, can be the only moment of truth in a lifetime of self-deception. It is when you lose everything, status, certainties, even hope, that something in you finally awakens. It is pain that wounds, but it is also pain that reveals. In The Brothers Karamazov, Ivan, the tormented intellectual, rejects the world because he cannot accept the suffering of children. He is at war with God, with existence, with morality. But this revolt is not superficial. It is an expression of a spirit that does not conform to the cruelty of reality. His suffering is an existential cry, and Dostoevsky does not ridicule him. On the contrary, he respects him. Because there is a nobility in suffering deeply for something that matters. To suffer, for Dostoevsky, is to love enough to despair. And perhaps you are going through something like this. Perhaps your pain is not a mistake, but a sign that there is still something alive in you. Something that refuses the lie, that is not satisfied with disposable pleasures, that cries out for a greater truth. Suffering is not your enemy. The true enemy is the desperate attempt to silence it. But there is a specific type of suffering that Dostoevsky denounces with fury, that which arises from self-deception, from the attempt to build an artificial happiness based on the lies we tell ourselves. This is what we will talk about in the next part, the illusion of manufactured happiness and the pain it inevitably generates. Dostoevsky understood like few the abyss between what a human being desires and what they can bear to face. He knew that a person lies to themselves with a terrifying ease, especially when it comes to their own happiness. And that is where the danger lies, because there is no greater suffering than that which arises from an inner lie, from a desperate attempt to appear well while everything inside you is crumbling. In Notes from Underground, its protagonist, a lonely, bitter, corrosive man, denounces the absurdity of reason as the absolute guide of life. He mocks the idea that if a human being knows what is good for them, they will always choose the best path. No. For Dostoevsky, man is unpredictable, contradictory, self-destructive. And, precisely for that reason, the attempt to turn life into an equation of pleasure and reward, as promised by modern society, is an insult to the complexity of the soul. Man likes to live his own life. He does not want to live a pre-fabricated life. This is what we read there, like a cry of revolt against ready-made and pasteurized models of happiness. You have already noticed this, even if you cannot explain it. That emptiness you feel when following all the rules, taking care of your appearance, keeping your feed beautiful, working hard, saying that everything is fine. Even after doing everything right, something still feels missing. That sensation of playing a role, smiling at the mirror but with a silent chest. It is what Dostoevsky would call artificial happiness, a theater set up to hide the fear we have of facing pain head-on. And the worst part, society rewards this theater. You gain likes, compliments, promotions. But deep down, you are paying a high price, the price of distancing yourself from your own truth. Because when you choose to believe in the illusion of constant happiness, you begin to silence your legitimate anguish, your sincere restlessness, your search for real meaning. And this generates a much more dangerous type of suffering, the denied, buried, encapsulated suffering. The pain that cannot be expressed because it does not fit the image you need to maintain. Dostoevsky saw this kind of falseness as a form of self-annihilation. In his characters, whenever someone tries to force an idea of happiness, they end up plunging into despair. It's as if he were shouting, "Do you want to be happy? Then stop lying to yourself. Stop pretending you don't feel. Stop trying to be what they said you should be." And here is the key. The more you try to maintain this image, the further you get from your own essence. And that is what begins to make you sick. The distance between who you are and who you are trying to be. Behind every forced smile lies a muffled scream. Behind every frantic search for pleasure, there is a desperate attempt to silence the emptiness. But Dostoevsky offers a way out, one that does not involve empty promises or magic formulas. He shows us that pain has a purpose, that when you stop running away and start listening to what your anguish is trying to say, something changes, something awakens. And perhaps this awakening has much more to do with freedom than with happiness. And that is exactly what we will talk about next. Why Dostoevsky saw suffering as a path to true freedom, and how you can begin to liberate yourself not by being happy, but by being honest with your pain.